and Money Show with Summer and Jen, and we are back live. It is Thursday, and we are talking about, some good stuff. Jen, you want to tell them what we're talking about today?
Yes, we're talking about money, of course, but there's so much other stuff that's involved with that. But we had a question that came in, and this is what we're talking about. Why is my spending out of control? It's ruining my relationship with my partner. What can I do about it? So this is talking about emotional spending. And so there's a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about today. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting because we're going to also share some things that you can do if you find yourself, spending out of control.
Oh my goodness. I love this topic, and there's so much depth to this topic, more than you realize. So you want to start off?
Yeah. So, this is something that's really interesting because as a former financial advisor, being in this money space for over a decade, and then now as a money coach, financial coach, it's very interesting to see the different dynamics because I get to see behind the scenes. And, oftentimes we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people's situations or what you may think is their situation, right? Because a lot of times you're only looking at the outside. You see maybe their big house, you see their highlight reel. And what I mean by that is you see they're going on these trips, and some of them are doing it within reason in terms of, okay, they budgeted for it, they had the money. But I will say there are also the other side of things where it's on credit card debt. They have a very expensive lifestyle, or that, they're constantly buying things, but then there's nothing in savings. And so just be very careful when you feel tempted to compare yourself to others, because you probably are not comparing apples to apples. And so I just want to share that because there was many, many times I've had to explain to clients in the past that, you're feeling guilty, but you shouldn't, because you're not comparing you shouldn't compare yourself, for one thing, because everybody's situation is different. But when you really understand that everybody is going through a different journey, you'll realize like, okay, I can't make better decisions if I'm constantly putting energy towards comparing myself. Okay. Yeah. So I will say that. I mean, so going to the, back to the question about, I'm spending, why am I so emotional when it comes to money? One of the things you have to also realize is that society and the environment and everything that you see around you is almost geared to sabotage you. You have to understand that. And when you go to a store, especially, it's like, and I did packaging for retail. And so I'm designing the stuff like packages and displays. And I will tell you, it is geared to make you spend your money, but you have to understand that that's the psychology behind it. So the placement of products in an aisle or in a store, all of that, even the colors, everything is psychologically designed to make you spend your money. And so when you are in an environment, and understand that the marketing is also there to entice you to buy, you see all these things from credit card companies and banks and whatnot. It's to like, hey, spend your money with us. Not spend your money, but yeah, use your money and use us. And so understand that the forces are against you from the get-go.
The force may be with you. It's not when you go to the mall.
Exactly. But again, you're going to hear a lot, especially in the beginning of this topic, that you are going to learn that you need to be very mindful and aware of what's going on around you in your environment, but also more importantly, what's happening inside of you. And we're going to be talking about a lot of that as well. And so understand that that's what's happening. So, there's this thing that, and Summer, I would love for you to jump in on this part. It's yes. One of the things that we're going to talk about. The first thing is that understanding like your temptations and your triggers. I think you need to start there. And what we're talking about is when you don't know and you just asking. Here's the thing that I was saying often was that people have showed me and told me like, I bought this thing. I know, there was a sale and I don't know why I blew all this money. I feel so bad. And it's this, and then the same person will tell me like, a couple of weeks previous to that incident, like, I know I got to do better. I need to save, I want to get my money right. And then they'll flip it. And then it'll be like, hey, I bought all this stuff and I don't know why I did it. And so there's this constant back and forth and yin and yang of like, I want to do better. I just blew my paycheck. I'm going to do the right thing now. And then it's like, this is what I observe, is that there's this weaving in and out of like, there's nothing holding, there's a structure. And so when we talk about feeling this emotional, like this everything is emotional and I don't know what I'm spending, it's because you don't even know what you're doing. This is why you're going back and forth. This is why you keep finding yourself in this financial mess, because you don't have a plan and you haven't stopped to understand what are those temptations and what are those triggers. And so, Summer, do you want to talk about triggers? Because I love how you explain this.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to go back to the emotional part. So I want to start with thanks for just basics and foundational stuff. Money, like many things in our lives, can be connected with our emotions. Those emotions are angst, happiness, depression, anger, helplessness, excitement, resentment, all of these different variables of emotion, right? We can swing many different ways when it comes to how we relate ourselves to the world, and in particular, in this question, money. And that impacts everything. That impacts our relationship, that impacts our well-being, that impacts how we see and view the world. Much of the time, this was modeled for us. But again, taking personal responsibility, it comes from really identifying your own emotions, understanding your emotions, feeling and being able to embrace those emotions and feel your way through, like what it is that you're attaching to money. What are the emotions that you're actually attaching to money and how that feels for you? Does that feel good? Does that not feel so good? Because when you go out to those stores, and this is where I will get to triggers, when you go out to those stores, or when you're on, your favorite online shopping, platform, I can mention many, and I love many as well. But when you're on those, do you just automatically click that put in cart button, finish the transaction? Do you go to the stores and just, are you one of those people who, they put things at the line right there, so you can be one of those emotional shoppers? If you're one of those emotional shoppers, they know they've got you. When you got the gum and you got the things hanging on the side, and it's like, oh, I think I need that. Do you really? That's impulsive shopping.
Yeah.
How is that making you feel? How is that going to make you feel later on down the line in regards to your checkbook and your finances? And how is your partner going to feel about you doing all of this impulsive shopping? So the key is identify how you're feeling. Identify, what it feels like when you go to spend that money, when you impulsively spend, when you are triggered. What are your triggers? Are your triggers, now I'm going to go over some of these triggers. Is it that you spend more when you're in a bad mood? Is it that you spend more when you're bored and you just get online and you start going, oh, I think I want this. I think I want this. I think I want this. And you put all this stuff in your basket, right? And then you go to pay for it and you're like, ooh, do I even have that in the bank? I'm putting this on a credit card. How am I going to pay for that? Do you spend more? And I noticed this about myself. When I start changing my eating patterns and I start eating less stuff out, I want to buy more online. That gives me a little bit more spending money, but it's like I could save that money instead, right? So if I'm eating better, I'm eating more at home, I'm eating less out, and or even ordering things to take out, I have more money. And then it's like, oh, but how do I fill my time now that I'm not spending all this time eating or focusing on eating? I want to shop. So know what your triggers are. Are they shopping? Is it that a friend's birthday, wedding, something's coming up and it gives you an excuse to shop? I mean, we find all these, and I see you want to jump in here. We find these excuses, right, Jen? I love triggers.
I love that you use the word excuses. And I went, oh, because when you said wedding, and hear me out. And I think such a great, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Okay. So, and because sometimes I feel alone when I think about certain things, but you tend to agree with me. You're like my sounding board. So when you said excuses and you said wedding, I would hear this all the time. I'm going to a wedding. I need to buy a new dress. And I will say, let me first explain to you all where I'm coming from. Okay. I have worn maybe one or two of the same dress to multiple weddings. Yeah. And so my reasoning is, when I hear this rationalization, I need to buy a new dress because I'm going to a wedding. My question is, why? Do you even know why? The second thing is, are the same people that went to the last 3 weddings going to be the same people at the wedding that you're going to? Because if not, nobody's going to know that you wore the same dress. It's a different audience. And then the other thing too is, like, they're not focused on you. They're focused on the people who got married.
On the bride and groom.
Yeah. So for me, like, whenever I would hear that, I would go like, really? You don't need it. And so that's why I made that face when I hear, because it is an excuse. So I don't know, that's what I wanted to say. That's what I thought of.
I think that's a wonderful thing. And it gets me to a point. It was also, it's so key. This is such a key. That word need, do you know what that means? Do you really need this? Is that something you need? Years ago, my husband, I don't know why he said, or out of the blue, or, he said, do you need it or do you want it? And I was like, ooh, well, yeah, that's a good one. And that just stuck with me for years. And it still sticks with me. So whenever I actually buy something, sometimes I might be like, oh, hell with it. I'm going to like buy that because I want it. But I know what it means now between, do I need it versus do I want it? And that is significant. So when I always keep that in mind when I go to purchase something, because it's like, do I really need this or do I just want this? And if I just want this, is this something that I can afford? Is this something that's really going to make me happy, or does it have a practical purpose? Like, does it have a purpose? And I like what you said about, I hear that a lot too. Now, I'm going to this, function or that function. I need a new. Really? Do you? You know what I did when I was in college? Because I was broke. I was working all the time. I worked my way through college. I worked 30 hours a week. I took that 17 units a semester, and I was in a sorority and I was working hard. But I took one of my prom dresses from high school, and because the styles had changed a little bit, I took it to a tailor, and it cost me less to get that dress trimmed at the bottom and lifted up versus going out and buying a new one.
That is so innovative. That's like something I would do. I love it. I love that you did that.
Yeah, I did that because I knew that I didn't have like a ton of money to spend on a new dress, but I knew I wanted to change the style of the dress a little bit, and it was going to be more cost effective. So there's ways that you're going to really feel good about spending your money by being a little bit more innovative. But again, I go back to, first off, where does this come from? How do you feel about, money? Where is the attachment to money? What is your feeling about money? What triggers you when it comes to money? But I like what you said too, on our other show, Jen, about, not just your triggers, but like, how do you start aligning your thought process with being more practical, less emotional? So why don't we go there?
Yeah, great. It's so crazy because we are so used to just like, going by the seat of our pants, and we don't stop. A lot of this is about doing the inner work. And so the next thing that I think is so important for us to understand when we talk about inner work, I think that's one of those buzzwords we hear in the coaching where we do the inner work. And it's so important though. And when we talk about inner work and working on yourself, this is about becoming mindful and aware. And one of the things I take clients through is understanding your money story. And that's actually really important. It's not something that a lot of people have ever really done or thought about. And so when I talk about that, when we talk about your money story, what I'm asking you to do is think about the earliest moment in time that your brain can go back to as a child. Maybe you're 12, and so the memory is, what is the earliest memory of money, your encounter or relationship or seeing it or whatever growing up. And so, for example, mine is like, I remember popping a balloon when I was 4 years old that I asked my parents to buy me because I popped it because I didn't like the character that was on it. I wanted strawberry shortcake. I got Wonder Woman instead. And I know, what a freaking brat. But because of that, I remembered it. And the reason why it was related to money is because I remember it cost $3 to buy this Mylar helium balloon. And when I did that, I felt this immediate rush of guilt. And I remember thinking like, oh, I just destroyed the balloon that cost money. I mean, I only had it for like, a couple minutes from when we bought it till we got to the house. And from that moment, and I'm skipping through all the steps, but I'm trying to correlate that, understanding that moment when that happened. And there's other events that took place afterwards, all the way up until, current times. Because of that moment, because I was able to recall that, and I was able to see that that was an example of my earliest memory of money in my life, but also how it's correlated to why I feel guilty asking for things. I'm very hard to shop for because of that guilt, that I didn't feel deserving. I felt unworthy because of that action that happened when I was little. I'm not that person that's going to say like, oh yeah, I want this for my birthday. Oh, it's my birthday. And I'm not knocking anybody that does that. I'm just explaining to you because of what happened when I was a little kid, and the money and the relationship tied to it. Even in the future now, I have this thing about spending money, wasting money. Like, it had that kind of effect on me.
Well, let me ask you, Jen, let me step in here because I'm going to do this like clinical role here.
Yes.
What happened when you put that pin in that balloon? Was it just something that you naturally felt like, ooh, why did I do that? And that was triggered in you? Or did your parents say, why did you do that, Jen?
No, they didn't. It was me feeling that guilt. Like,
wow,
like, I just destroyed it. I just destroyed the balloon. It's not flying anymore. It's flat. There's a big tear in the Mylar sheet. I was like, and I remember just looking at it like it's done. Like I killed something.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of emotional attachment to that one early moment in your life regarding what the value was that was attached to it, and your emotion that was attached to that item too, and what you had done. And the guilt. And so now you've been able to identify it. So you carry that guilt on into your life, but you want to kind of come to terms with, all right, money, I shouldn't always feel guilty about money, as long as we get real with understanding what money is and how it impacts my life. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about the impact that money can have because of your actions or, your responsibility with money.
Yeah. So let's when we go back to the question.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So when we go back to the question, the thing that's happening, the result that's what's happening is that it's affecting her relationship with her partner. And so, especially when you're involved with somebody, you have to think about the implications of your actions.
Yes.
And it's already bad enough if you're by yourself, but now when there's somebody else involved, there's so much more that you need to think about. And then it gets amplified if there are children involved. And so again, as you're going through these tiers of practical things you can do, understanding your story, understanding the triggers, and, especially with what Summer said earlier about like, what is the emotion behind it? And when you do these things, you become more aware and you're mindful. So, even in my own situation, now that I understood where a lot of it came from, I had to think about, well, what can I do to shift it? Understanding that, it's powerful. Once you know where certain things and actions come from, you proceed differently. You realize, okay, it's okay to buy something nice. It's okay to, and that's and this is what I was going to say too, with what you said a few minutes ago about the biggest thing that I got from this thing that you said is that you're taking a responsibility. And you're holding yourself accountable. Like, stop faking it. Like, either say that you know that you need it or know that you want it. And taking that stance that I'm not going to make excuses. And because now it's going back to this, emotional spending. It's like what we're trying to do is that you want to avoid this yuckiness. And what I mean by yuckiness, you don't want to go do something and then feel like, why did I do that? Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Or I'm so stupid. It's like, but if you are intentionally buying something with intention, with a plan, you've heard us talk about budgeting and all those different things. When you're doing it on purpose, it changes the emotion. It changes the relationship. And this is moving towards something healthy. It's moving away from guilt. And I'll tell you the biggest negative feelings, especially when you're looking at a vibrational, we didn't talk about this in the last show, but I just thought about it, vibrational frequency.
Yeah.
If you want to be operating at a high optimal frequency, at love, at joy, and all these emotions, the lowest ones are guilt, shame, unforgiveness. And so you kind of have to analyze that frequency at which you're in, your relationship with money, because if you're constantly down here, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to not only improve the relationship with money and how it affects the spending, but it's also going to affect so many other things related. You planning, you making good choices with the money, and then ultimately, like we're talking about in this very scenario, how is it going to, affect your relationship? Because, when people come together, and I talked about this in my book, Do Before I Do, like there's so many things that we talk about, like what kind of, living room do we want to have and furniture, what kind of house, but then we don't talk about the money. And it's not even just from the budgeting perspective, which is important, but a lot of times the whole thing about the emotions and like, how did you grow up? How did you feel when, you saw your mom handling everything, or, what did you see? The modeling. Summer, you talk about modeling all the time. And I think that's so, so key when it comes to understanding where did these thoughts and patterns come from.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. Modeling and then responsibility, modeling and personal responsibility. And again, you're going to be a model. So if you don't want to create cyclical patterns, remember, you've got to change the patterns. So there is a cycle of addiction, right? And this could be even as simple as how you think about your money, how you use your money, and then how you feel about money, right? So you may say, and let me give you an example. You may say that you want to change, but you're not changing.
Yeah.
Right? And you still create the same patterns over and over and over. And that's what we call cyclical. The cycle of pattern continues. The cycle continues. Let me give you an example. I went into a job and I was being hired as a director for 3 units. They said they wanted change. And I said, you really want change? We want change. I asked them, how many people have you brought on prior to me in the last 2 years? 6 or 7 people.
Wow.
Yeah, right. And being a military spouse, I was like, we moved. There's only so many jobs in that little city. I have to take a job. Mm-hmm. Even with a major pay cut, I knew better. Like I should have listened to my intuition. If they had that many people, did they really want change? Because those people, they weren't, they were bright people. They were coming in to do similar things that I was doing. But as I got into that company, I realized as I began to work, as I began to restructure things, as I began to rewrite the SOP, I realized they don't really want change. Even though I'm trying to apply change, and even though I have their verbal investment, they didn't want it. So you have to really want this. You have to want change. And what does that look for you? Why are you resistant to that change? I'll tell you why. Because it is attached to those emotions. It's attached to those feelings. It's attached to that feeling of reward, that dopamine, jolt that you get when you go and buy that new dress, or you go and buy that $200 worth of candles, or you go and buy that meal. It's even worse with food, because now you're getting the dopamine and, like flowing because you're excited about the food, and now you spent the money. Because a lot of times, do you ever go into a restaurant and you go, okay, we can go out to eat or we can eat at home. And then by the end of the bill, you're like, okay, that was $50-something for 2 people. And you're like, shoot, what could I have done with $50-something?
Yeah, that's opportunity cost.
Right. Right.
Yeah. When you realize like exactly what you said, oh my gosh, that could have paid a bill. That could have
paid a bill.
Yeah.
So that gets me to my next point, which is the practical part of this, right? And you too, budgeting, what that looks like. So, actually being able to apply some practical skills and knowledge to how you can make change. Because I don't want to leave you here with, okay, this is the problem with this relationship and this is why they're encountering this relationship. Yeah, it has to do with values. It has to do with emotional attachment. It has to do with, how you feel when you do these impulsive purchases. It has to do with hiding purchases. It has to do with all of that, and like what your emotional tie is to this and your behavior pattern. But then we have to go on to the next step, which is, as Jen said, write out, and this is a great way of starting, write out your money story, write out that first memory. She told you about her first memory of what it felt like as a child popping that Mylar balloon. And it's like, and the guilt she brought forward with her because of it. Write out that first memory for you. Write out what it felt like when you did A, B, or C, or when you felt A, B, or C. The next step would be, Jen, maybe now a budget. I mean, bringing it into the future.
Yeah. I think that's so important. And we've talked about that many times in different shows, but the budget, your spending plan, whatever word feels good for you, it's the same thing. You need to have a plan. And I think so many times when I've witnessed this personally, when people ask for help, it's like, I don't know why I'm spending. I know I need to do better. And then I'll ask, okay, have you ever done a plan, a spending plan? No, not really. So that is always like the first, sign that this is why it's happening, because you're not telling the money where to go. Yeah. You're spending it and then you're wondering what happened. So creating a spending plan is so important because it also sets limits for you in different categories. So there's so many easy ways to do it. If you can either do a digital spreadsheet, you can do, there's so many free online apps. Message us if you want to know some examples. You can even do it on a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be fancy. It's just that you have to set parameters, which leads me to the next practical thing is that, put a limit on certain things. So for example, Summer gave an example of like eating out. Well, know going into it that the budget is like, $100 or whatever it is. So then don't be ordering this, you're getting a plate and you're not getting the filet mignon and, salmon dish that's like, 50 bucks, and you're going to have your partner eat like, an appetizer. and, it's like, be realistic. And so again, I don't come from the place of, eat, potatoes and raw, top ramen and all that stuff. It's like, you don't have to live like that if you make a plan. Then you know your limits, and then you know what categories to take it out of after you've taken care of your responsibilities. But when you don't know what limits are on certain categories, this is where this is all look at this as the plan is going to create freedom for you. And you have to move away from that guilt and that shame. And again, like I called it that yuckiness, because if you can do all of these things within reason and know where money's going, you're moving towards feeling freedom. You're feeling like good. It feels intentional. That's the biggest thing. You feel intentional. You are taking responsibility and understanding like, I want this or I need this, but you know what you can do because you're setting those parameters and putting those limits and it's to protect you. It's not, you also have to shift your perspective. This is not about feeling, I feel restricted. Well, if you're going to think that, that's how it is going to feel. But if you can look at it like, this is going to help me stay within the limits. I'm not going to blow my plan. I can feel good about what I'm buying or enjoying and really not feeling yucky about it. And that's the whole thing at the end of this, because the way that you are feeling is going to show up in your relationship, because that's what this is ultimately affecting. If you can't take care of what's happening within you, how do you think it's affecting your partner? I mean, how many times have you seen somebody or your partner either going through something and and that's fine. Everybody needs that moment to themselves. But when it keeps festering and it keeps going, and now you get to a point where like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to be around them right now because they're either yelling at me or they're just so down because they haven't worked that out yet. So it's the same kind of thing. If you're constantly feeling guilty and yucky about what's going on with your money, your partner's going to feel that. And it's not even emotional. It's going to feed into your guys' money together, especially if you got shared bills and financial responsibilities together.
Well, and I want to add to that, Jen, it really does feed into the moment as well as your future.
Yeah.
And when you can look at that from how is this impacting me now? And how does it feel? And what is this emotion? And what was my trigger? And then how is it going to impact me down the road? Because if you continue in this cycle or this pattern of behavior in regards to your spending and how that impacts your relationship, I don't care if you're a man or a woman and you're creating this behavior, you got to figure out why. You got to figure out why to change the pattern. Why is it that you feel a certain way? And get to it. Get to it. It's now, because again, you could be impacting your future, whether or not you can buy a house, whether or not you're going to get a loan for a boat, whether or not, whatever it is that you want. Remember, it's not always that immediate gratification. It is, you can have that gratification, but as Jen said, plan for it. And I think we need to start early with our kids, really early, and teaching these things, because teaching about triggers, making a spending plan and what that looks like, cycle of patterns, and what that feels like. And let me tell you, we have all been there. We have all been there. We've been there. I've been there where I've amassed credit card debt because I was going to school and I wanted to keep up with everybody else, and I wanted to be in a sorority, and I wanted to buy a new dress, and I wanted to, trust me, I've been there.
We all been there.
We've all been there, right? But in the long run, I had to clean up that credit card debt, and I had to make sure that that was clean so I could buy a house, so I could buy some cars, that I could, on and on and on. And also, by the way, before you go overseas with the military looks at your finances. So
wow.
they don't want to send you overseas or send your husband to war if there is a financial conflict or financial issues in that family. They actually take that very seriously. They actually ask for your spending plan, your budget, and what your outstanding debt is. So, and people don't know that. And it was like, oh my gosh, they're asking for a what? Holy moly, right? So, especially when you go for promotions too, they look at that. So,
wow.
That's right. So we had to get clear of whatever that he consumed, whatever debt I consumed. How we did that was, how we planned was a very effective way. We got through that. And my last point here is, it was liberating. It was so
Isn't that crazy?
liberating. It felt so good. And you know what? It has been years, but it's like, I look at that and go, I never, ever, ever want to be there again. Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. Because I don't want to feel oppressed like that. When you feel oppressed financially, it is overwhelming.
You're so right. I love, and thank you for sharing that. It's so good for people to hear that, because I think so many times when people are at that stage where they are coming to terms that they need help, but then they're worried about it feeling restrictive and feeling confining, and I can't buy this and I can't do this. And it's like, but how much longer are you going to go the way that you're going without help and changing these patterns and behavior? Because there's going to be a moment in time where you're either going to lose a house, lose a spouse. I mean, you're not going to be able to do anything else. And so don't look at it being restrictive and confining. It's going to be liberating. It's actually the inverse. I mean, I know even for me personally, when I really started looking at, finances, my personal stuff, and getting really, really intentional about, okay, what do I need to do? How do I clean this up? What do I need to do moving forward? I wasn't there yet, but just the pure action of doing it and tracking everything was so liberating. It was like, it becomes like this, oh my gosh, this feels good, because it's not this yucky thing in the back of you. Like, okay, I know I need to do that. And I know there's a mess, but it's like, when you start to put yourself in this, you get the ball rolling, you feel so good. You get excited when there's these little wins, because you don't even know if you're doing a little win, because you're not tracking it, or you're not even doing intentional work to improve the situation.
Right.
And so I totally agree. It's like this, it is very liberating, and it feels like you're moving towards freedom. And I think that's what we want you all to understand, that when you do these things, it's moving towards the emotions that you do want to experience.
And I think there is real action in putting thought to paper.
Yes.
So that connection of really being able to put that down and then see it. Let me tell you, Jen and I talk about numbers all the time. We talk about numbers, and when we start like manipulating numbers and putting them down on paper, we're like, oh, that looks good. That really looks good. We can do that. And so that really opens up a range of ideas, a range of excitement for us. It gives us goals to go towards. I mean, just putting those thoughts to paper makes it makes a difference. And it actually is an action, that first step. So take that action. I love that, Jen.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, I just want to say the last thing is to just reiterate that last part you said about when you do that thought to paper and taking the action, it's very powerful. And I'm thinking, going back to this couple that in this predicament, this situation, you know, when you do that and you put things into motion and action, you get inspired. You get inspired, and it will change, because the question is about, how do I handle this? How do I change what's going on? Right. And when you start creating those plans, when you start thinking about, oh, this is where the money should be going or where it could be going, you know, come back to core values with your partner. What is it that you're trying to ultimately get to? What is it that you guys want to do together? And every time you decide to spend money here, what are you taking away? You know, we talked about opportunity cost. What are you taking away from things that you want to do together? It could be that trip. It could even be as simple as like, hey, we can't even pay the rent. And so that is how it's a direct effect when you don't do these things. So, you know, I think it's so powerful to just reiterate that, because again, when you move towards creating a plan, like it's gonna feel better. And it's going to make your relationship stronger. When I know it sounds unromantic, but it really is like, I feel safe and secure because I know what's going on. We have a plan. I don't feel like I'm just kind of wandering through this life.
Absolutely. So we've listed a lot of different things here. As we go through the show, we also make comments. We make comments and we put a lot of strategy down here. I listed them from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 there are so many strategies here. But I think the first thing is really getting in touch with those emotions and that attachment to money and why you feel the way you do, and then writing up that money story. But let's give our nugget for the day.
Yes.
All right, Jen, do you want to start?
Oh my gosh, you know what? Mine's actually, I will use the one that I did last when we were on Instagram, because we didn't really touch upon it today here on this platform. But one of the things I would say, my nugget was piggybacking off the last thing I said. Go back to your partner and dream again. And I think it's important for you guys to come together and just dream again and list out 5 things that you want, whether it's a trip. Maybe it's a new couch. Maybe one of you wants a new game console, like, you know, Xbox, whatever the heck that thing is. And make a list, because sometimes we are just buying things frivolously, and we haven't really thought about, like, these are the things we want. Okay, do we have the money to buy it? But again, this comes going back to being intentional with your purchasing. But when you can do that together and write out like your wish list, your dream list, like, I think that's fun. It helps you guys get excited again. It helps you plan and dream together again. And then it helps you also figure out, like, what's the first thing we want to get on this list? And then how can we make this fit into the budget in terms of saving for it? So I think that will help your relationship when you can dream and think about the things that you can do together.
Oh, I love that, because it really does bring a couple together, and then they can start working on goals together and that dream list together. My husband and I do that every year.
Oh, I love it.
Trip every year, and we get so excited because we start putting that money away together. We have a focus, a financial goal, right? And we have all of our other things planned out, and, you know, we've got our budget, our spending plan, so to speak, and then we have that goal, that dream, right? And that is our annual trip. And we start planning for that. We start putting money away for that. And it gets us excited because we are like, oh, okay, we want to go here and we want to go here, but how much is that going to cost? And blah, blah, blah. So we start really planning. I love that suggestion. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And mine is really kind of going back to something that we talked about, which I think is so valuable, is really getting in touch with those emotions that are linked to money. And I really love Jen's suggestion about writing that first money memory.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she gave an example of that. If you did not catch that example, if you did not catch this conversation today, please go to our YouTube page, the Life, Love, and Money Show with Summer and Jen on our YouTube page, and check out this conversation. There are so many pearls and nuggets here that you're going to want to take away with, and maybe even watch with your partner. I mean, because this question is about, you know, how money impacts your relationship, and that impulsive spending, that spending on a whim, how that really impacts that relationship. So check it out. Go back there. Mine is about really getting in touch with those emotions linked to finances, linked to that money memory, and then also your triggers. That's a big deal.
I love it. I love it. So important to do.
And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jen.
Yes. Thank you, Summer. This has been such an awesome episode.
It has so much good information here. So thank you all for watching, for being a part of the show. If you have questions for us, this is 30 minutes of free coaching. Free. Actually, we went to 42 minutes today, almost 43 minutes of free coaching. We want to answer your questions. DM, direct message your questions to us on our Life, Love, and Money page, or here on Facebook, or on Twitter, or on YouTube. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Join us here next Thursday, where we'll be answering another life, love, or money question. All right. Take us out, Jen.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Life, Love, and Money Show with Summer and Jen. Dr. Summer Watson is the owner of the production and coaching company Core Women, LLC, is a doctor of psychology, has a depth of experience working in both for-profit and nonprofit in human services and mental health, is a professional coach, seminar host, documentary film producer, and an author. Jen Fontanilla is a former financial advisor and now a certified money coach, speaker, and has published 6 books. She has worked with organizations such as the Walt Disney Company, Warner Brothers, Target, Goodwill, and the U.S. Air Force. She loves working with women and helps them master their money and mindset to empower them to build the ultimate life without worrying about money. Join Summer and Jen every week as they go live on the Life, Love, and Money Show on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn.